Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, my name is Mariam Tseke, and I was actually born here in London, Ontario. Just like you guys, probably. And maybe I'm gonna ask my aunt real quick. Was I baptized here in this church? No. Okay, I thought I was. Okay, never mind. But yeah, I was born in London. My dad went to Western, so same campus as you. And but I moved here. I left here when I was pretty young. I was like, I think 3 or 4, and lived in Alberta since. But I've also been to Ethiopia a few times and lived there for a bit, but mostly stuck around in Alberta, in Fort McMurray. And now I'm going to Stanford once I won the Breakthrough Junior Challenge, which we'll talk more about. I won a scholarship and then applied to different schools in the States. And now I'm about to enter my 3rd year at Stanford in California, and I'm studying symbolic systems and science communication. So symbolic systems is basically like Stanford's version of cognitive science. I'm basically studying a lot of like computer science, philosophy, linguistics, and psychology, like all mixed together, and studying science communication as well. So yeah, that's kind of a quick rundown of what I'm doing.
So I would like to ask you first about what you're studying, symbolic interactions and science communication. What I found it how interesting it was that you were learning about linguistics and psychology and how that fits into science. So I wanted to know how exactly these things correlate together. Would you like to explain?
Yeah. So symbolic systems is kind of known on Stanford's campus as being like the everything major, where you're not like exactly in STEM 100%, but also not completely just humanities. So kind of like the overarching questions and topics in the major have to do with what is a mind, what is a machine, can machines have minds, there's a lot of discussions about like artificial intelligence. I haven't fully delved into that topic, but it's definitely talked about. And linguistics and psychology sort of come into that too, because we're comparing human languages with computer languages. So like, how do we express logic in human language, and like the way we naturally process language, which is a psychological, psychology related topic, and how that compares with how we communicate with computers. And so that's kind of where the linguistics and psychology part plays in. And the philosophy is more of the, can machines ever become sentient? can machines ever have minds? And how would it compare to a biological mind? And so it's kind of clashing and combining very seemingly different fields, but they all kind of come together and boil down to like logic and like abstracting what it means to think. It's very, I kind of didn't see myself going in this path exactly, because I started my first year in physics, but kind of like fell into more of the topics in symbolic systems, or as most schools would call it, just cognitive science.
Thank you very much for your answer. So, when you mentioned how you went from physics to symbolic systems and science communication, how did you make that transition? Was there anything or anyone that encouraged you to make the transition?
So I started off in physics because in high school that was kind of I was generally, interested in a lot of science anyways, but still like arts and music and a lot of other things too. But I started off in physics because I thought that, I was reading a lot about physics, and some questions that I asked relating, like in science, kind of boiled down to physics. So I thought, okay, why not start there and see how it goes. And so once I got to university, it was like very open-ended. Like I don't know, everyone's program and schedule is not strict. You don't have to declare a major until the end of your second year. So you're like pretty much left to like explore whatever programs and majors you want and don't have to make a decision that soon. And so I took some math and physics, and in my third quarter, like the third term, I wasn't able to take physics because I didn't have a certain math requirement from high school. So I kind of thought, oh, why not hop on the computer science train? Because it's like, I barely know people who haven't taken computer science there. It's just like a huge, like, Silicon Valley culture thing. Like, everyone on campus has taken computer science, so I just kind of like hopped on that train and thought, oh, why not? I've never done this before, and this could be interesting. And so that quarter, I took a few things that were different outside of my major. Like, I took a history class, I took a computer science class, just to try things. And then I realized, okay, maybe I just kind of tried physics and wasn't as interested as I thought I would be, and found computer science a little more enjoyable and thought, okay, let me keep trying this. And then I read about the symbolic systems major and thought, oh, this might like better suit my interests, and that's kind of how it went. So yeah, but like at university, everyone's like encouraged to almost not know what they're majoring in. So it's like if you came and you thought you were doing one thing, you're like really encouraged to like just open your mind and like take whatever interests you, because you have no idea what you might come across and what you might like instead. So the culture is just like try whatever you want and see where it takes you.
That's a very beautiful message, and I would like to, usually because we think that we have strict deadlines for certain things, that we have to come up with everything right on the spot, have an entire plan for everything, and we can't make changes, otherwise it'll mess everything up. Especially with me, that's how I think. But I found how the campus culture at Stanford University seems to be very open-minded, and everyone's encouraged to explore what they like and what interests them, and to pursue their dreams and passions. I was wondering if this was one of the reasons why you were drawn to going to Stanford University in the first place. Were there other reasons as well?
Yeah, so before winning Breakthrough, I wasn't planning on leaving Canada really, but with the amount that was in the scholarship, it was like, okay, and I could only use that scholarship for undergrad, so I thought I might as well. People were encouraging me to apply everywhere, so I applied to schools in the States. And when it boiled down to making a decision, it wasn't really, like I couldn't really go wrong with my options, so I picked Stanford because from what I could gather over COVID about the culture there, I kind of thought I would vibe with it more. And they also had like a music and computer interacting type of department, which I thought would be really cool and was like a healthy sign that there was like some research that I might be interested in that relates music and art and the sciences. So that's kind of ultimately where my decision kind of went. But I feel like in university in general compared to high school, you're like really encouraged to take different courses and try new things. So I don't think it's something that's like exclusive to Stanford. You're here to try new things, and because like in high school you will take like math, English, science, something, but then once you're in university, it's like I've seen some classes that kind of combine our interests. For example, you're interested in like criminology and social justice, and then there's some classes there that like combine like the ethics of computer science and AI or something like that, right? So it's like the barriers are all blurry. It doesn't really, you're not like pushed into one field or another specifically. So I think that's just kind of the nature of post-secondary education in general. Yeah.
To add on to what you were going to say, I believe that it's very fascinating that university in general is very much more fluid with allowing students to explore different courses and to learn things from different subjects that they might not have as much freedom to do in high school. For an example, in my criminology major, they have different courses that they allow you to choose from different subjects like history, English, psychology, child studies. And they combine these things together and find a way when these courses are somewhat related to law and studying crime. So I found that very interesting. When in high school it's very basic,
Yeah.
but then in university you get to explore more. And as this is a very strange transition, now I'm going to be asking you some questions about the 2020 International Breakthrough Challenge that you participated in. And I wanted to first ask you what the competition was meant to do, what your purpose was basically.
So the Breakthrough Junior Challenge is an international science video competition where teens aged like 13 to 18 years old, so a lot of you guys are eligible all around the world. Anyone can participate. And it's a competition where you have to make a short video. In my year, it was 3 minutes. I feel like they're making it shorter every year, but previous years it was like 5 minutes. My year was 3 minutes, and now it's 2 minutes. Where you just make a video explaining a difficult topic in science or math. They typically have like 3 categories: life sciences, math, physics, and every other year or so they might add like a special topic of interest like space exploration or something like that. But yeah, so it's an international science video competition. It's partnered with Khan Academy, so you know, if you know Khan Academy and saw like teaching you algebra and math, I got to meet him because of this competition. It was really cool. And the top prize involves getting a $250,000 scholarship, $100,000 science lab for your school, and $50,000 cash prize for your high school teacher. So in 2020, I was announced the winner, which really changed everything for me. It totally kind of switched my path, and it was, yeah, so it was a turning point for me. But the competition itself, I made my video about quantum tunneling. So it's a topic in physics just involving the really small parts of atoms and how they behave very strangely in ways you don't expect from the way that we experience the world every day. And I made my video in June of 2020 and found out that I won in November or December of that year. And I was in grade 11, so yeah.
That's really wonderful how you were able to take a complicated concept and creatively explain it in a short period of time. And I was wondering how you found out about this competition and what led you to competing in the first place.
So I think the competition started in 2015, and I heard about it from the start because I used Khan Academy, and since they're partners with the Breakthrough Junior Challenge, they sent out emails to every Khan Academy account every year just being like, oh, participate in this challenge. And so I knew about it, but I never competed until 2020. And so like every year I was like kind of aware of it, but I heard about it through Khan Academy. And I knew that I was like interested in science communication and science in general because I really, really loved watching like so much YouTube channels about science. Like I watched all like the PBS Digital Studios shows you could think of on YouTube. Like there was a SciShow, Crash Course is kind of like more for classes, but I still watched that. And there are so many shows like that that I just watched like every day. And in school projects, I always like enjoyed doing science projects and stuff. So I kind of thought like at some point I'm gonna do this challenge, but I never sort of did because I was intimidated by other entries actually. So I would see the other entries and they had like very, very, very fancy looking videos. Like they looked like they belonged in a PBS documentary. It was kind of intimidating. So I never did it until grade 11 because I thought, okay, well, I'm 17 and I can only participate until I'm 18, so that's 2 chances. I should do it now. And that's kind of what really pushed me to do it at the very end. But yeah, I knew about it for a while and kind of never did it until then. And it's funny because at the very beginning, when I heard about it and didn't participate because I was intimidated by the other entries, I thought, oh, you know, my video making abilities aren't good enough. And by the time I was in grade 11 and made the video, the tools that I had didn't actually change. I had like the same, you know, computer or software or abilities, I guess, but I just kind of like used them differently and was able to make a video at the end. So it was kind of a funny thing to look back on and say like, hey, like the resources I had hadn't actually changed. It was just the way that I used them, sort of.
That's very wonderful how you were able to improvise with the tools that you did have to create a video, which led you to winning the competition. And I heard how you mentioned that you were intimidated by other competitors, which I think many of us are intimidated by other people who we're competing with, whether it's to get into the university or a school that we want to, or winning a competition like you have done. And I was wondering if there were any other obstacles that got in your way, and maybe what advice you have for young people who are intimidated by other people doing better than them at what they want to pursue.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess, so one, I guess, straightforward obstacle for me, while making my video for that competition was quite literally like what I was using. My computer was like very broken, for example, and I wasn't like gonna get a new computer to do this, right? Like that's what I had. It was like, it didn't really type well, the keyboard was broken and the screen was breaking, and it was just like not ideal for video making. And you know, I didn't have like a great camera, I just used like my phone or something. And my friend was helping me edit at the very end. Once I scripted, filmed, and animated, he helped me like put it together. And he was using his iPad that was like actually completely shattered, and he was like literally like cutting his finger as he was like editing. So it just seemed like it wasn't supposed to work, right? Like we kind of looked at each other and we're like, what are we doing? Like this is not going to get anywhere. And so. And he even, like, I remember him mentioning, he was like, wouldn't it be funny if you won? Like, this is a funny story to tell. Because I'm out here, like, my keyboard's not working, right? So I'm, like, copying and pasting letters from Google, because I can't get letters on my keyboard. So I'm typing the script, but, like, have to open a new tab and, like, copy paste the letter M or something. So that was a very straightforward obstacle. It was, like, resources in some way, right? but we kind of made our way around it. We knew what, like, I knew what I wanted, and I knew, like, it wasn't impossible, and I think that was just, like, the important part, not just that, like, oh, there's this in the way, there's that in the way, but it was just, like, it's still not, I can still make the video. There's just a lot of work around, but it's still possible, and that was enough, right? So I made it, and thank goodness my friend came and helped me as well. So, yeah, I think that's kind of one important thing to keep in mind. I've also heard some people have asked me, like, they were like, how could you, from like a small town in the middle of nowhere, even think about like winning this prize? And I was like, well, I don't think too hard about my circumstances in that sense. Or like, they're like, it just, I guess like from an outsider view, it was kind of strange for people to think like, oh, like you're this random girl who is in the middle of nowhere in northern Alberta and like did this competition. And like, okay, but I can't change that I'm from somewhere that might not be average or something, right? Like it just, I guess from an outsider view, just seems like such a strange combination of things, or my circumstances might seem a little unusual, but I mean, there's nothing you can really do about it, and I think there are always like some advantages in some ways. Like to me, like growing up in Fort Mac wasn't like the end of the world. Like a lot of people think like, oh my god, like why would anyone live there? But I get asked a lot. And, but I mean, there's charm in that place, and I grew up there, and there were a lot of things that I enjoyed. And so to some people it might be like, oh, like what a disadvantage to grow up in such a place. But to me it was like, oh, I spent my summers hiking with friends, and that was like something that like nurtured me in some ways. So yeah, I think that another thing that kind of gets in the way when you're, I guess, competing, or I don't know, trying to, I don't know, level up in the world is the way people view your circumstances, but you know, you don't need to see them that way. Yeah.
It's really beautiful that you shared how much you and your friend have been working very hard to make this video work. And it's interesting because, you know, it's not every day that you get to hear good stories like this where someone works really hard and they persevere and they're able to be very successful. And when we hear their stories, we usually just put them aside because we're so focused on other things, or focused on people only getting to really high places because they were able to manipulate the system in a way, or people. I was also wanted to ask you about how any of your friends or family or anyone else around you, have they been there to encourage you to pursue STEM and to participate in this competition as well?
Yeah, so I think for like STEM in general, or I don't know, to kind of push in academics, definitely my parents. They're the first, I don't know what to call it, like layer or base in all this, because they, like for example, the way I guess that they raised us was kind of like, every week at least, we'd like go to the library or like the science center or museum or something, but usually the library, because, you know, obviously it's like free, anyone can go and you want to read and stuff and do activities and events there. Like, I think it's safe to say, like, we kind of like half grew up in the library, regardless of where we lived. Like when I lived in Calgary, my mom took us there all the time, and then once we moved to Fort Mac, like we were there all the time too. So I think that was like a huge factor. They, like, both my parents really encouraged us, and it's funny because the other day my mom was telling me, she's like, whenever we moved, because we moved a lot as kids, they're like, she said, whenever we moved to a new place, the first thing I would check is where the nearest library is. And it's funny because there is an Einstein quote that says, the absolute most important thing you need to know is where the nearest library is. And so when I heard her say that, I was like, whoa, like, because I knew the quote, and I thought, wow, like, is my mom Einstein? But, but yeah, so there's definitely some value in that, clearly. It works. So that was definitely a huge factor, just like kind of growing up with reading a lot. Although I admit that like university has kind of like pushed me away from that because I'm so busy. But yeah, I think that's really crucial. And you know, for STEM, I think it was just like one of the many things that I was drawn into because I still did a lot of arts and music and everything. So it was kind of, I would say maybe like they kind of, my parents, I could say like fostered more like a love of learning and anything in general, and STEM was just like one of those things that I was interested in. As for the competition and like who might have encouraged me, I didn't tell anyone I was doing it. So I was kind of just working on it and isolated in my room. No one really knew why I was in there. Every now and then I would come out and be like, hey, let me explain to you this quantum tunneling thing, and they'd be like, what are you doing? And then I would explain it to them and then try to understand how much they understood from what I explained and like fix the script based on misunderstandings or something. So there was like some support in that sense, but mostly I didn't tell anyone I was doing it. So yeah, but once I made it, and once you know, there was like the judging, different phases of judging, and the voting that people had to do, like the public voting, then definitely I got so much support for that, I think, from everyone. So yeah.
Thank you very much for your sharing. Sorry. So, it's very interesting that you didn't tell anybody that you were joining in this international competition, because usually when we're doing something exciting or we have exciting plans, we tell people, right? We tell our family and our friends, oh, I planned this, and then they're like, okay, when are you gonna do it? And then we're gonna do it. But you didn't tell anybody, you were just working on it, and nobody knew why until after you had already submitted your work. And I thought that was very unique, and I think that what we can learn is that if you're planning on doing something, just do it. Don't talk about it with anyone, you know, unless it's something risky. Traveling around the world to preach the gospel, that's risky. But for you, what you did, that's something phenomenal. And I think that if I were to tell someone, or if someone else were to tell someone else about doing something like this, and they're not doing it, I think then it's really just about feeling more compelled about thinking about achieving success instead of actually pursuing it. I heard we were talking earlier about how you were working with the Canadian Association for Girls in Science. And you mentioned how you were doing some workshops and interviews with people about your academic journey and your experience in the STEM field. So I wanted to ask you how that's been going so far, what you've been able to accomplish so far while working with them.
Yeah, so the Canadian Association for Girls in Science reached out to me pretty soon after my result of breakthrough was announced. And I Yeah, I mostly did for a month or two with them, just some interviews, and they had like virtual panels with other science, I don't know, role models, I guess, or some professors and researchers. Yeah, it was kind of like this, except over Zoom. People were like asking questions, and we kind of like went around and gave our thoughts about our experiences in STEM or role models we have. And yeah, and actually, funny thing was, a few months ago, the president of the Association of Girls in Science emailed me because the government couldn't find my contact information. And so they went around and found her to email me about, just a few months ago, I went to London, the other London, the one in England, to join Trudeau in the delegation for the King's coronation, actually. So that was kind of, I guess, it happened as a result of that too. And yeah, so that was kind of, I guess, the last time I kept in touch with them. But they still do a lot of events. I'm pretty sure you guys can join too. They have some virtual events, some, I think, in-person workshops for girls of all ages, I think, from like elementary to high school. And they have like mentors too that you can work with if you are interested in STEM.
That was very wonderful about how your success with this competition has brought you so far to encourage other girls to continue going down that path instead of veering towards something else. And because in science we often see that there are a lot more men involved, and the most famous scientists that we acknowledge today are mostly men. And when young girls, who are interested in science and in mathematics, when they see all these men, they're like, that's great, but are there any women? And there are plenty of women who are also very wonderful scientists as well, such as Madame Curie and many others. But they don't get much attention like Albert Einstein, as you mentioned earlier. So I was just wanting to ask my final question for this interview before we allow the audience to ask questions. What I wanted to ask you is, do you have any advice or words of encouragement for girls or any young people who are wanting to pursue STEM or who might have other goals?
So yeah, what you said about girls' representation absolutely rings true, because not only and I heard this from someone a while ago, not only is it important for girls to see themselves represented in different fields like science, but it's important for boys to see them in those positions as well, so that everyone can, appreciate and acknowledge and encourage women and girls to be in those positions, because everyone needs to see that, yes, like anyone can be in science or any other field as well. So I think, it's important for girls, absolutely, but it's also important for everyone else to see. Like this can be the norm. This should be the norm. So I think from my experience, maybe what I can advise is I'm kind of trying to stay away from like the generic aphorisms like never give up, but it's like kind of true. Like, you do, have to believe in yourself and know your worth and really push to do what you want and what you believe in. So, build your support systems. Your family, your friends, So, because you don't have to do this on your own, and a lot of people don't, because everyone has role models and mentors and people who help them along the way. So it's really important to have that too, I think.
Thank you very much for sharing your story. It was amazing. And now, would anyone in the audience like to ask Maria Tsugay any questions about her academic journey or any advice on higher education or about pursuing STEM? Just anything.
Anything at all, yeah.
Hey, no, you want me to start with you? Because you are saying you had a lot of questions for her.
I have one.
Okay, you want to stand up? Do you want to?
It can be anything. Anything you want, just ask away.
How old were you when you started science?
Okay, so you said how old were you when you started science? I think that's depends on how you define science in some ways. If you mean when I started to be interested in it, I think all children by default are interested in science, and I don't just mean that for science in general, but like everyone when they're 5 will ask, like, why is the grass green? Why is the sky blue? Why does the duck, I don't know, swim that kind of way in the pond or whatever? But then, you know, as you get older, you might just start asking different questions, or maybe you were encouraged to ask other questions or something. So by that definition, or by kind of thinking of it in that way, I guess you could say since I was really young, I was to start asking those questions. But if that's the case, then that means everyone has started science at a certain age. So yeah, but I guess if you mean like sort of like doing experiments, I can tell you that every year in elementary school, I won the participation award at the science fair. So it was like just the participation. By that, no, just to be very clear, everyone gets the participation award. Just to make that really clear. So I didn't ever win the science fair in school, and yeah, so it can kind of be what you want it to be, whether you did science at a certain age or not. Because I read a lot of books too, and I think, you know, you could count that. Yeah. Any other questions or follow-up questions? Yeah, anything you want.
Yoni, Nati? I know you
I
missed
don't know. You could like shout out a question because I
Yeah.
feel like the mic might be a little hard to pass around. Yeah. In high school, yeah. I was in the school band and I played percussion. I played piano as well, and I was also in the school student council. Wow, so stereotypical, but yeah. I did student council as well. Oh, something just. Okay, yeah. Those I mostly did those 3. I also made art because I enjoyed drawing and stuff. So yeah. Yes.
So I heard you went to the king ceremony.
Yeah, the coronation.
So how was your experience to be there?
It was really cool. It was kind of a fever dream because I was very jet lagged, but because I went straight from California to London, just like one random day of the week because that's when they emailed me. But it was really cool. I got, I stayed in central London, got to meet the other members of the delegation. There were like Canadians from, all across the country. And we all got to meet the Governor General, we got to meet Trudeau, and we got to like see, go in Westminster Abbey during the coronation. It was like pretty like high security and stuff. And it was a really cool experience, I think. There was quite a variety of people on the delegation, which I think was a good move on Trudeau's part. It was really cool. There were, I think, 10 or 12 of us in that group, and 5 of us were like under the age of 30. So I was the youngest one. I was 19. So my birthday was like the day after that. So and you could also tell like Trudeau's clearly the youngest leader there. So it's kind of like, kind of matched that. And there were a lot of Indigenous leaders as well. There were 2 astronauts on the delegation. So you just had like a variety of people. It was really cool to meet all of them. Yeah. Any other questions?
Any questions?
Anything you want? Yeah, do I see a hand?
I have a question actually for you. Thank you for being here and sharing your experience. That was very, very fulfilling. I know you talked about your parents, how they encouraged you and started the way for you. I'm so happy that there's some parents here who can listen to that as well. And really happy to share the video if you consented. For other families who are not able to make it today. My other question is, after you finish your school now at Sanford, what was your plan after the 4 year or 5 years? Do you want to continue school, or are you planning to get a job and work somewhere you have in mind?
Yeah, that is a question I get a lot. I'm not sure. Even going into it, I wasn't sure. I was like, maybe I'll start in physics and see what happens. So, and then that didn't turn out to be. So, I do want to try research in academia as like one of the first things to try. Like have like a research lab position, and see if I like that, and if that's something I'm interested in. And if that's the case, then I would pursue academia. And if that isn't the case, then I'm not quite sure. The cool thing is my major is very, very flexible. Like people have all sorts of different careers afterwards. And it's not just my major. I think it's very true to like all programs and majors. Like people end up doing very different things. Like there's one professor in the math department there who, like, I kind of like remind myself of his career when I'm in doubt, because he started off as a painter. He was from Japan, and that was like his career. Like he finished high school in like painting and arts, and then did that for several years, and then at some point became like very interested in ancient extinct languages. So he became some kind of like archaeology linguist something. And did his like master's in that, and then was doing research in dead languages for a while. And then he came across a book about a mathematician, and he read the biography and thought, oh, I think math might be interesting, let me try it out. And then he tried math, and he taught himself calculus. He taught himself Russian to teach himself calculus, because there's this very specific book that he wanted to read that was in Russian about calculus. So he kind of like went all the way around. And then after that did his PhD in math, and is now a professor at Stanford teaching math. So, he started as a painter, then did like archaeology and linguistics, and then became a mathematician. So I don't expect myself to like, I don't know if I will like bounce around as much as he did, but I'm also not, trying to have too much of a plan, because I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you. Mesfin has one question for you.
Well, my question was actually, are you still following the physics and astronomy beside that, like beside your courses?
I
like
have
especially astronomy.
astronomy.
Yeah, and physics, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about taking like an astronomy class as an elective or something and trying that. I still like kind of casually stargaze at home, especially because there's darker skies there. But yeah, not quite. I mean, it kind of goes like what I have friends who are physics majors still, and we talk about these things, but I haven't like taken courses in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a person, he just got, now I think he's a radiation expert, he finished physics, now he's in Vancouver and he's a doctor. But it's a lot of function, like, because your ability of physics and astronomy, and that's why beside your courses, and then sometimes it's better, yeah.
Yeah. I think when I did breakthrough, it was I just had I don't know, preference for physics at the time, or like was more inclined to it, but and was interested in it. But like in the end, I think I was just really excited about, well, the idea of quantum mechanics itself, but also like the communication part was really what excited me. So I've been, pursuing that still, taking like, doing like a minor in like science communication. So I feel like that endured more. I still, although even in my science communication classes, I've been like communicating with physics related things here and there, but yeah, physics on its own, I haven't as much. But yeah, but it's still there, like to some extent, yeah.
Still,
Yeah. If there's any other questions, anything you want, it doesn't have to be like related to like school too specifically. If you just have like any general questions, if you want to participate in the challenge and have questions about that, like the Breakthrough Junior Challenge, it's an annual competition.
Yeah, one more question. So, how do you cope with the distraction, like TikTok or social something, and then you are focused? How the student, like the kids, can focus what they want, and how can we discipline them? Like how you become what you want?
That's a good question, because I had to delete TikTok from my phone because it was like taking my life away. Well, like not directly. It was like I got it at the beginning of the pandemic, actually, like a few months before doing my breakthrough video, and then I started to realize how much time I was like spending on it, like not on purpose. And then I thought, okay, but I know a lot of people have different ways of managing their screen time. For me, the best way was to just not have the app on my phone. Like for example, like Instagram, I always have an account, but I don't have it on my, like installed on my phone during the school year, something like that. And then I would like log in like once every month or so on my computer. But that's just, people have very different ways of managing it. So I think as one thing that I try to think of it as, thing that's absolutely crucial though is not to be on social media first thing in the morning or last thing at night before going to bed. I think like that's really important. Those are like very critical times that you don't want to like overdo it. There's research about that, but because you just make it a habit if it's first thing in the morning, and that's what your brain expects to like, that's the happiness it expects to receive in the morning, and that's not great. And then it also keeps you up at night, which is, I don't know, I really value my sleep. So, yeah. But yeah, people have, I don't know, you'll have to figure out what works for you, I think. And for me, it was just better not to have it on my phone, and then only having the apps at certain, times. But yeah, some people have like the time limit thing on your phone, so that might help too. But yeah, try to do other things instead. I don't know. I don't know, I find I prefer staying outside during the day instead of at home, to like take myself out of a certain habit. Like I would just, even if I have nothing to do, like for example at school, even if I don't have something to do, I'll still like get up in the morning and like go go somewhere on campus. Yeah, just kind of force yourself into some kind of routine maybe. But I mean, the willpower comes from you, not your parents. So you have to know what you want to do. Yeah. I'm open to any more questions if you want. Keep them coming.
I know you are a significant icon for Habesha people, not only Canadian Habesha people as well. And we're working on creating a platform for, children at your age or high school or going to university to have one platform to go to just to learn from each other or mentor each other. Will you be open to be added in that group? Perhaps if it's mainly virtual at this stage now. Nobody stay in one city, so we're including anyone who's Habesha and Canadian or maybe Ontario. So I don't know if you're interested in that. Maybe I can mention it to the team so you can be connected.
We can talk about that after.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious. Cool.
It's personal. How do you handle all this propaganda, like when you get that, that news and from all over the world? How do you handle it?
That's true. That's a good question because after, so I found out I won 2 weeks before it was allowed to be public, which was a very hard secret to keep, and that was an interesting time. But yeah, you're right. Once that happened, I was having like interviews every day, and I still had school for like hours every day. So it was kind of hard. But I don't know. Yeah, I had some time to absorb it in the meantime, and it's I don't know, one day at a time. Yeah, it sometimes it's overwhelming, but it hasn't been like so bad, overall it's like such a great net positive. I have no complaints. Yeah, it's a lot to manage time with sometimes, but I mean, since then, it hasn't been as intense as then, because that would be like 4 or 5 interviews a day, and it's like still on top of school and everything, but now it's like not like that. So yeah, I can focus on school. Yeah.
And you speak Amharic. I don't know how you were able to learn that and how you were keeping up with your language. Do you have any suggestion for the young folks here?
Yeah, I can't take full credit for that because I think my parents were just really strict about it. Like, I mean, from like a neuroscience perspective, I find it really interesting that a lot of immigrant children understand their parents' language but can't respond, right? And I was reading and researching a lot about like language and like parts of the brain and in people who like lose the ability to speak. And it's interesting because there's actually 2 separate areas in the brain where one outputs speech and the other one inputs and understands speech. So I'm like, whoa, how does this happen? But for me, like personally, day to day, it was just, I don't know, my parents just acted like they didn't understand us if we spoke to them in English. So that's what they did. And then we also went to Ethiopia a few times throughout elementary school. So we lived there, and that definitely has some, factor. When we went to school there, though, we didn't have to speak in Amharic all day. Like, we went to a different type of school, so we did stuff in English, but maybe just being there had an effect. I don't know. It was, maybe you'll have to ask my parents. Yeah.
That's great, thank you. Anybody has questions?
Any questions?
No? Nia, do you have a question for her? No one? Okay. All right. I think that's it. Thank you so much for being here.